Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Good morning, dear devotees. We are reading the fifth canto of the eighth chapter of the fifth canto of the Bhagavatam. Is about to end tomorrow or the day after. And we'll go into chapter 9 about the life of Jadabharata. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Naruttama Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudiraye Nasta Prayesha Vadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamas Loke Bhaktir Bhavati Nastaki. And the verse goes as follows. Ahokastam rastu hamatmavatam anupattha yad vimukta samasta sangasya vivikta punyaranya sharanashyatmavatat atmani sarvesham atmanam bhagavati vasudeve tadanusravana manana sankirtanadan Nanusmara pyo gena shunya sakala yamena kalena samaveshitam samahitam karsnyena manastatu punar mama budasyaran mriga sutam manu parisusrava. These synonyms. Ahokashtam, alas, what a miserable condition of life. Prasta, fallen. Aham, I am. Atmavatam, of great devotees who have achieved perfection. Anupatat, from the way of life. Yat, from which. Vimukta samasta sangasya, although having given up the association of my real sons at home. Vivikta, solitary. Punya aranya, of a sacred forest. Sharanasya, who had taken shelter. Atmavata, of one who had become perfectly situated on the transcendental platform. Atmani, in the supersoul. Sarvesham, of all. Atmanam, living entities. Bhagavati, and to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vasudeva, Lord Vasudeva. Tat, of him. Anushravana, constantly hearing. Manana, thinking. Sankirtana, chanting. Aradhana, worshipping. Anusmarana, constantly remembering. Abhyogena, by absorption in ashunya, filth, sakala yamana, in which all the hours, kalina, by time, samaveshitam, fully established, samahitam, fixed, karsnyena, totally, mana, the mind in such a situation, tat, that mind, two, but, puna, again, mama, of me, abhudasya, a great fool, arat, from a great distance, mriga sutam, the son of a deer, anu, being affected by it, parisusrava, fell down. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In the body of a deer, Maharaj Bharata began to lament. What misfortune! I have fallen from a path of the self-realized. I gave up my real sons, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life, and I took shelter in a solitary, holy place in the forest. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshiping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. Purport. Due to his stringent execution of devotional service, Maharaj Bharata could remember the activities of his past life and how he was raised to the spiritual platform. Due to his foolishness, he became attached to an insignificant deer and thus fell down and had to accept the body of a deer. This is significant for every devotee. If we misuse our position and think that we are fully engaged in devotional service and can do whatever we like, we have to suffer like Bharata Maharaj and be condemned to accept the type of body that impairs our devotional service. Only the human form is able to execute devotional service. But if we voluntarily give this up for sense gratification, we certainly have to be punished. This punishment is not exactly like that endured by an ordinary materialistic person. By the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is punished in such a way that his eagerness to attain the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva is increased. By his intense desire, he returns home in the next lifetime. Devotional service is very completely described here. And here again comes that 40-letter word. Tad anushravana manana sankirtanaradana nusmarana vyogena. Whoa. The constant hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord is recommended in Bhagavad Gita, Satatam Kirtayantumam Yatantascha Dhridavrata. That's Gita 9:14. Those who have taken to Krishna consciousness should be very careful that not a single moment is wasted, that not a single moment is spent without chanting and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his activities. By his own actions and by the actions of his devotees, Krishna teaches us how to become cautious in devotional service. Through the medium of Bharata Maharaj, Krishna teaches us that we must be careful in the discharge of devotional service. If we want to keep our minds completely fixed without deviation, we must engage them in devotional service full time. As far as the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness are concerned, they have sacrificed everything to push on this Krishna consciousness movement. Yet, they must take a lesson from the life of Bharata Maharaj to be very cautious and to see that not a single moment is wasted in frivolous talk, sleep, or voracious eating. Eating is not prohibited, but if we eat voraciously, we should certainly sleep more than required. Sense gratification ensues, and we may be degraded to a lower life form. In that way, our spiritual progress may be checked, at least for the time being. The best course is to take the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami, Avyartha Kalatvam. We should see that every moment of our lives is utilized for the rendering of devotional service and nothing else. This is a secure position for one wanting to return home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyanatimirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chaksurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Kam Karoti Vachalam Umlangayati Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurundinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanyam Ishwaram. Vanchakalpatarvyascha kripa sindhuvya cha patitanam pavanevyo Vaishnavavyo namo namaha. We continue with the this is not an allegory like we had experienced before, some other sections of the Bhagavatam, the King Prachina Barishad. This is a real example, and it is a very unusual example, because normally, as one changes bodies, there is no remembrance of previous lives. There may be some glimpses that we have been here before, the deja vu, or things that we don't necessarily understand how did they function, that some child sits at the piano at a very early age, at 3 years old, and starts playing. This is inexplicable to those who believe that we are the body, but those who understand that we are in a sojourn, and this is just one of the many stops. It's not surprising. But why is that Krishna deprive us of knowledge of previous lives? Couldn't we benefit by remembering certain things that happened in the previous life? We have to relearn everything. In one sense, Krishna is giving us a blank slate to try again. Try again. It's like you play chess against someone who is much better than you, and the score is 27 matches to 0. By the 28th match, you will feel a little discouraged. So that person say, okay, let's forget what happened so far. Let's start from 0. 0-0. So that's a bit of an incentive to our performance. So in the same way, Krishna is very kind and eliminates the previous score, which is that we are losing 27 million to 0, because we try to enjoy this material world, we try to control this material world, and the result is that we were unhappy, and we had to leave that particular body behind. So what does that mean? It means that you won't have to remember all these traumatic events that happened so many times in the past. Even right now, we can see not just ordinary people, but devotees struggling with traumas that they suffer in this lifetime. They can't get them off their head. It's just this intense, bitter, deep suffering within the heart and the mind that cannot be eradicated. Well, imagine you remember hundreds of thousands of those. Our life will be so disturbed. We would not even imagine how to begin spiritual life. Because we are going to be so absorbed in all these traumas. Oh, imagine bad parenthood. Well, imagine you had 27,000 bad parents that they marked you. You remember all of them. This will be a deterrent to move forward. You were bullied. Okay, you were bullied hundreds of thousands of times. And you had your heart broken millions of times. And you were poor and suffered from hunger. And you remember all the diseases that you had. This is torture. So Krishna is very kind and said, okay, forget it. We'll just eliminate all that and get you started from zero so you can concentrate on worshiping me exclusively. Exclusively. We see some polytheists in the Hindu population. This is somewhat common that they have, because they're very inclusive. They're very open people, so they don't want to leave anybody behind, and they want to cover all the bases. So they put Ganesh and Shiva and Durga and Krishna and Ram and everybody else that they can find is on their list of beings to be worshipped or respected, because worship is a bit tall of a word for many of them. Just in case one of them happens to be God, we got you covered. We got your picture on our altar. So this is not a very intelligent position, but appears to be safe. But Krishna requires, by his own volition, that we exclusively worship him. And this is shown in, for example, in the Govardhan Lila, where Krishna dismisses the idea of the Brajavasis that in order to obtain good harvest and rain, they have to worship Indra. Indra, like everybody else, takes orders from a supreme Lord Vishnu, who is an expansion of Krishna. Krishna is very far removed. So those who are fortunate that they worship Krishna, Vasudeva, as is called here in this verse, they don't have to undergo this type of cosmic bureaucracy where you have to worship one god for one thing and another god for another thing. These are all delegates. These are all functions of the material world that are delegated upon different personalities. Just like if you go to a store and you have a problem with the cashier because the cashier is not good at math and he's giving you the wrong kind of change or is overcharging you, you call the manager. And then the assistant manager shows up. And then if the assistant manager is thick-headed and is favoring the cashier, so they're both in the wrong, then you call the manager. And If that doesn't work, then you keep going up the corporate ladder until you get to headquarters, and you get to the president of a corporation if necessary. And then you go to the regulators, and then you go to court, and then you go to a higher court. It's such lengthy hierarchy ladder to be followed, because you don't, if the problem is not solved, you have to keep going higher. So the problems in the material world are not solved unless you go all the way to the top. That's quite simple math. And at the top is Krishna. And Krishna is really not very interested, I would say. He's interested in the living entities coming back to him, but he's not interested in the affairs of the material world. He's having fun. And how do you know who is God? Because he's the only one who doesn't have a job. Because even Vishnu has a job. He is the maintainer. Everybody else is doing something. And Krishna is just playing. He doesn't have a job. He doesn't have a schedule. Well, he has a schedule, but it's according to his own sweet will and for the pleasure of his devotees. So this is a corporate ladder of this cosmic manifestation. Nobody can solve all of our problems until we get to the top, and the top is Krishna and the supreme planet of Goloka Vrindavan. So we have to follow the footsteps of the gopis, because we are Gopi, Bhartu, Para, Kamalaya, or Das, and Das. We are servants of the servants of the servants of the gopis. So those are our heroes. Those are the ones we have to follow. Bharata Maharaj was all of a sudden got concerned about a deer. That is a step back. That is a fall down. I just heard, and this is natural, I would say. This is natural to become attached to a creature that totally depends on us. This is very common. It's called having a pet, even having a child. This is the idea that someone is totally dependent on you, and so therefore they are somewhat obliged to love you, although felines in a different category. So this is very common. People have pets and they pet them. They buy them clothes and special food and et cetera, purified water. Imagine that. I just heard that from a person who escaped North Korea, that last year Kim Jong-il, the ruler, the psychotic ruler of North Korea, sequestered, confiscated every single dog in the country. Even so, people had pets, people had dogs. Not everybody eats dogs in Korea. And he confiscated them and had them kill all of them, because he thought this is a Western sentiment and we don't want to fall into that trap of having feelings for an animal. Well, it is natural, is inevitable. That's why kitty videos and puppy videos are so popular. Any little animal, people go gaga over. So this is an unnatural suppression. But it has to come to our attention, because there is a gradual, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process that we may not be equipped spiritually to deal with this. So I've seen many devotees keeping pets for company. I guess they feel lonely. course, if one has a strong relationship with the Supreme Lord, one will never feel alone. If one is practicing bhakti yoga and chanting with feeling, that feeling of loneliness won't be there. Krishna never abandons us. That's what a true friend does, is loyal to the end. So Krishna, as the Paramatma, is accompanying us throughout this journey and never giving up on us, no matter what we do, no matter what nonsense we get embroiled with. Krishna doesn't give up. That's a true friend. So there is no reason to feel alone, because we're never alone in the first place. Krishna is always with us. But nevertheless, sometimes we feel like we need a little external stimuli in the form of affection from an animal. So he cannot suppress these feelings, but they have to be turned to the original source of it, which is Krishna. So Bharata Maharaj is lamenting in this verse, I forgot. I actually left my wife and kingdom and children and went to a sacred forest to meditate, and I was successful. And he attained Bhava. That's very high on the list, very high. And then he became attached to a deer. And then everything changed. His meditation became nil. He was meditating, he was faking that he was meditating just to have interactions with the deer who nudge him. So we shouldn't do this. We should be very concerned about our Krishna consciousness and not let a deer or any form of Maya, any shape of the illusory energy come and allure us away from the worship of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada quotes a verse from a Gita that goes, he partially quotes, Satatam kirtayantu mam yatantas chadri davrata namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta upasate. This is from the Gita 9:14. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So there are different steps in this process, always chanting my glories. People who are very eager to give Krishna to others are usually fulfilling that part of it, endeavoring with great determination. In other words, no matter what obstacles come before one, and everybody has a selection of obstacles to choose from, the determination is always there. This is also according to Rupa Goswami, that patience, enthusiasm, determination, they need to be there at all times. Bowing down before me, not just a perfunctory salute, but actually understanding our insignificance. This is so crucial for us. Otherwise, we will think we are number one. There's always that tendency. Those who live in the material world, they wanted to be number one. That's why they came here. That's why we came here. So bowing down is a good way to deflate that false ego that is thinking is all about me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. Perpetually means forever. And with devotion, with love. Like I notice when I make an offering, when I cook some bhoga and try to make it prasadam by offering it to Krishna. That's why I usually only cook and try to get someone else to offer it, because I don't have this kind of sentiment, high sentiment that will attract Krishna to accept it. But I know when I have to make the offering that I have to do it with love, not just perfunctory, not just say the prayer and say, okay, it's offer now. I can eat it now, which is what I wanted in the first place. But I had to go through this ritual. No, this is actually, I'm giving love to someone who is being giving me love since time immemorial and will never abandon me. What is wrong with that? So that's why a real devotee is always chanting the glories of Krishna, is always teaching others about Krishna and endeavoring with determination. No, like, oh, I don't feel like today. And bowing down, understanding I am your servant, life after life. I'm insignificant. I'm perpetually worshiping Krishna with love and devotion. It has to be like that. Because why would Krishna want anything else? What does Krishna need from us? We have nothing. All we have is our voluntary capacity to give love. And Krishna wants that. There is, as far as not wasting time, there is a verse from the second canto of the Bhagavatam, 2.3.17. Ayur harati vaipum sam udyanastam chayanaso tasyate yat kshanonita utama shloka vartaya. Both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So this is the way to avoid death. Because every day the sun rises and sets, and our life is getting shorter. But if one wants to rejoin the eternality, the idea that this is just a setback, this is just an insignificant period of time where I have to regain my sanity and practice Krishna consciousness. So the best method is by discussing the topics of the all-good personality of God, just like we do during Bhagavatam class. And for the rest of the day, we should figure out a way to keep the topic of Krishna consciousness dancing within our minds and coming out of our mouths and so on. Okay. I think I've said enough. Any comments or questions?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a nice class. This is a, personally, I read Srila Prabhupada's purport, and I am struck with terror. The prospect of taking another birth is terrifying for me. I just have a stock of memories of terrible suffering in this lifetime, and the prospect of having to go through another course of the sort of inevitable suffering that is packaged along with every birth is really, really distasteful to me. Now, as devotees, we pray that we pray for devotional service, birth after birth. We we are supposed to cultivate a mentality of detachment, that we really don't care whether I have to accept another body or not, as long as I can have the association of the devotees and the opportunity for devotional service. I don't know. I'm not on that platform personally. I am terrified of another birth, and it's frightening to, for me at least, to think of how easily that can happen. I have practical experience of being covered by Maya and succumbing to all kinds of nonsense, and sometimes it happens in subtle and insidious ways. It creeps up on you, and other times Maya's sheer brute force just overcomes, particularly if you've made the mistake of committing some offense, you become particularly vulnerable. Anyway, it frightens me, and this problem of developing attachment for lower life forms. Krishna, of course, describes descending into the animal species as the most dangerous type of fear. There's lots of things to be feared within the scope of material nature, but accepting an animal birth is particularly bad. Srila Prabhupada explains that if you descend into the animal species, generally, this was not the case for Bharata Maharaj, but his case was unique. Ordinarily, if you descend into the animal species, the way that the material nature works, you are forced to accept repeated births within animal species. You descend through all the different species to the lowest life form, and then gradually you ascend, you come back up through those species before you get another opportunity to accept human birth. So that prospect, of course, that should be terrifying to anybody, and therefore Krishna describes this as the most dangerous fear. If you think about the sorts of suffering that living entities undergo in animal species, Krishna explains that every one living entity is food for another, and you see that in the animal kingdom, someone is a predator, someone is the prey. The predators don't necessarily worry about killing the prey before they eat it. They just capture and they start eating, and the unfortunate prey suffers horribly. The suffering in other species is just absolutely horrendous. It's unbelievable, and that I don't know, that to me is just absolutely terrifying. And Srila Prabhupada would admonish us at times that we are not sufficiently afraid of Maya, that sometimes we just don't take the situation sufficiently seriously. We don't understand the extreme gravity of our circumstances, that we are on a precipice and we can easily fall. The consequences are incredibly dire. It's very, very serious. It's the most serious thing. But there's something about material life that is intoxicating, and we somehow are able to overlook the fact that we are facing the jaws of death all of the time, and we tend much of the time not to worry about it particularly. I was surprised when I don't know if you were around at this time or whether you recall, it was decades ago that Mother Irmela wrote an article for Back to Godhead, which was based on Srila Prabhupada's purports to this story of Bharata Maharaj, and she was suggesting that for devotee parents, it's not a really great idea to take pets into the home. Not particularly good for the children or for anyone for that matter, that the association of animals is degrading and they are inherently moochy and your environment becomes moochy, and there's always the jeopardy of developing such attachment that you may even accept birth, an animal birth. And I was surprised that there was a tremendous outcry of objection from countless devotees. Tremendous number of devotees wrote into Back to Godhead magazine expressing their unhappiness with the article and defending the practice of keeping pets. So, and you know, I understand where they're coming from. Throughout my life, I've been a great animal lover. I've had innumerable pets. I've had a lot of pets. I actually operated a neighborhood zoo and charged admission when I was a young person. I had all different kinds of exotic species, many different types of pets, and great affection for many of these animals. And so there was an attachment that I had that was not even necessarily for a particular animal, but for the practice of keeping pets in general, and so strong an attachment that when I became a householder, I thought that it might be a good idea to have some pets. I think, you know, perhaps each of my children should have a pet and experience what that's like. And from that, I rationalize that they'll understand that animals are also sentient beings, that they are people that with a different set of values. They'll learn to respect other species, and I just, my mind filled with all kinds of rationalizations for this, and they'll learn also something about life and death, because typically your pets don't live nearly as long as human beings, and so you get to experience their demise, and you learn something from that. But I wound up getting some pets, and I really regretted it, and I'll never do it again. It was an experience that cured me of that attachment. But it happens even to devotees who have been around for a while, that I can't count the number of devotees I know that have pets at home and are also profoundly attached to them. I had one. There was one gentleman I had made a devotee many decades ago, and he was approaching the end of his life. He was in very poor health and in jeopardy of leaving his body at any time, and he wanted to come and take shelter of Gita Nagari, and there was no facility for him. I offered to let him stay in my home, in an unused room, and but he he insisted that he had to have his dog with him, and I had a problem with that. Um, he just could not be separated from his dog. It was his dog was I don't know, he had a greater attachment for this dog than any of his family members. Uh, Even it was, the end of his life, and he's since passed away, but he could not bear to be separated from his dog. So it's the instruction that Srila Prabhupada is giving us here is, he's warning us, admonishing us, and um, it's a very serious thing. It happens to devotees. We fall into this this snare, this pitfall. It happens. Devotees succumb to all kinds of maya. Even the biggest and best of devotees, we've seen over the years that sometimes even so-called big devotees sometimes have terrible fall downs, and happens in all kinds of ways. But this is another pitfall, but this one is really scary. It's terrifying. The prospect of descending into animal species is really terrifying, and it can happen easily. We assume the qualities of whatever we associate with. That's just the nature of the living being. We take on the qualities of our environment and the entities that we interact with regularly, and so it can happen quite easily. And when it happens in a subtle sort of way that isn't apparent while you're going through the process. Only, just as Bharata Maharaj, only at the end of his life, he looked back and realized, oh my God, what have I done? Look at what's happened. It happens subtly. And, as you were saying, Saurabha Prabhu, that, it's a natural process. It's natural, but it's incredibly dangerous. Because it's natural, we don't think a lot about it. It happens easily, and imperceptibly, but very dangerous. Anyway, that's just some of my thoughts.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I have a friend, a sannyasi and a guru, that he joined with a girlfriend and a dog. And he said, his girlfriend was not interested in Krishna consciousness. And his dog followed him everywhere. So I didn't have to ask him, would you like to join? He just assumed that he could join with the dog. And when he found out, he was pretty heartbroken that he wasn't heartbroken about his girl not being interested, but he was dismayed that the dog couldn't be part of Krishna consciousness. I had an experience I also had pets growing up, and I had two cats, that mother and son, that they died pretty tragically. And I took a vow. I didn't know that was a vow, but I took a vow to never allow myself to become attached to an animal again. And we can see that now one of our cows, Tungi, is leaving her body, and she's unable to stand, and because of the pressure of the weight on the organs from lying down all day, she's going to pass away pretty soon. So we become attached to the cows, but we should be able to see that it's not like I want this cow to stay. As we can see that there's a transition going on, that these animals, they sacrifice their life to give milk, to make offerings to Krishna, to Damodar. So they had a glorious life, surrounded by the love of the devotees. So it's a good thing. And we are attached to them, but we are not attached for them to stay, to hang around. And we just see them as servants of Krishna, just like we see each other. Okay. Unless there is anyone else's hand raised for a comment or a question, we can end here, as the deities should be opening pretty soon. Thank you very much for your kind attention and tolerating my ranting and otherwise. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada.
Temple room camera, please. Please turn on the temple room camera.
We're trying to fix it. I'm not sure what's wrong with it.
Thank you.
I can't see anything.
Jaharacharita. Jaharacharita. Yeah.
now it's like absolutely nothing's. It's like, yeah, you can't even see anything. And before we, it had like some symbol. I, um,
And everybody would have said if they don't see it.
yeah, Karka Prabhu, can you see anything from the temple?
I see everything.
You see what?
Yes, I am seeing everything.
Oh, because we can't see it from our computer. Okay, well, that's good. At least you got darshan. Just show.
Yes, thank you for your kind efforts.
Sure, we thought that there was nothing happening. Our screen, it doesn't even show anything.
We saw it.
Okay, we close for now. It was 20 on this day.